Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Winfo Solutions webinar on how to overcome your Oracle Cloud Applications testing challenges. My name is Mark Campbell, and I will be your host today. I'm a business advisor to Winfo. Firstly, I'd like to say thank you. Thank you for giving us your time this afternoon and for creating the space in your calendars. I truly hope and believe that you'll find this an interesting and stimulating hour or so. I'm going to run through a few housekeeping points to begin with, and then we'll turn to the body of our discussion today. So firstly, by joining this webinar today, you've consented to us recording this session. So we will be recording, and we'll send a link out afterwards to the recording. So that's available for everyone. All of you attendees aren't able to see each other, and your microphones are muted. But hopefully you can all see myself and my three panelists, who I will ask to introduce themselves in a second or two. We have got a Q&A function, and we'll turn to questions and answers at the end of our session this afternoon. If you've got any questions or any points you want to make, please click on that icon and put your question in there throughout the discussion, and we'll try and address as many of those as we can towards the end. In terms of the structure, after these kind of opening remarks and introductions, I'll set a little bit of context, and then we'll go into the panel discussion. Thankfully, for your benefit, there will be no slides today, so you'll hopefully get some real engagement with us. And as I say, we will at the end send out a recording of that. The Q&A session I will host, and we'll be kind of monitoring your questions as they come in. So if you have any additional questions which aren't really relevant for today, but you want us to follow up with afterwards, then please do feel free to email us at sales@winfosolutions.com. That's sales@winfosolutions.com if you've got any other questions, and we'll pick that up. Final bit of housekeeping. The duration today is an hour. We'll finish 3 or 4 minutes early just to let you get off to your next commitment or take a comfort break or whatever. And just to remind you again, as I said, we will be sending out a link of the recording so you can pick up everything and have the chance to look at things again. So that's it by way of the housekeeping. Let me introduce our speakers, or actually allow them to introduce themselves. So Lawrence.
Good afternoon, Mark. Thank you for the opportunity to be part of this discussion. My name is Lawrence Vesey. I'm a partner with SIA Partners, an international consulting firm. We have just over 1,800 staff, 18 countries, 31 offices. I am based out of Ireland, and that's where we have our Centre of Excellence for ERP implementation and business transformation programs. And I have in excess of 20 years of ERP implementation experience, covering Oracle, SAP, Workday, Salesforce, both on-premise and more recently cloud solutions. And so very interesting, looking forward to the conversation this afternoon.
Great, thanks, Lawrence. Harry, to you next.
Thank you, Mark. Good afternoon to everyone, and thanks for joining the webinar today. My name is Hari, and I'm a managing director in Winfo Solutions. My focus in the 20-odd years has been large-scale transformation projects. I'm a qualified accountant by profession, work closely with clients to ensure that they get the best solutions and value out of their investments in their ERP. Within Winfo, I manage both sales and delivery and act as client engagement leads for some of our larger projects. I welcome you all to the webinar today, and I'll be offering insights as a solution architect delivering large cloud application projects today. Thank you. Thanks, Mark.
Great, thanks, Harry. And then Venkata, to you, please.
Thanks, Mark. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Venkata Nori, one of the directors and co-founder of Winfo Solutions. I have over 20 plus years of Oracle Cloud ERP experience / on-premise implementation experience across multiple geographies, multiple industries. I also have additional responsibility for innovation and product development within the Winfo Solutions. Today, I'm going to bring some insights of what to help overcome cloud application testing challenges.
Great, thanks, Venkata. So just been doing some totaling up there. I reckon between us, we've got nearly 100 years of experience, and I confess, I think I contribute the majority of that. So thanks, everyone. Let's turn now to the core of our discussion, what we're going to talk about today. I guess if you're on this webinar, you're probably already, or you're thinking about becoming a Oracle Cloud ERP center or user, in which case, you almost certainly will be already appreciating or recognize the benefits that the SaaS application brings. Well understood, of course, about resilience, the ability to scale rapidly in line with business growth, to ensure that you can always have the best-in-class industry standard processes, and of course, continuous innovation. And all of that, as everyone appreciates, is delivered principally through the mechanism of this continuous improvement, the 90-day release cycle that you're on with Oracle, where the application is continuing to be improved and you're getting the new features and functions that come with that. However, of course, with these upgrades and these improvements come some challenges, and those challenges have to be addressed by you as customer. The first challenge, which we're going to, or the main challenge rather, which we're going to focus on today in particular, is the challenge that you get for regular testing. This constant release cycle places this obligation on the customer to ensure that the platform is always fit for purpose. And of course, you want to make sure that when you get the release, you minimize the disruption to the business. And of course, make sure the impact to any of the business critical processes, be they in finance, HR, payroll, supply chain, whatever it is, you want to minimize the disruption to that and to the business whilst maximizing the business improvement opportunities. And in an ideal world, you want all of that to happen without the business even knowing it's going on. And as a football fan, I see the challenge here as a little bit like the very best referees in football. When you get to the end of the game, after the release cycle has gone through, you barely notice that it's happened at all. But without them, without the referee, without the testing cycle, it could not actually be delivered at all. Unfortunately, we hear, and I'm sure many of you experience, that that's not always the case. The kind of observations we pick up from our clients include the time they get for approving the new release isn't enough to do sufficient testing. Sometimes we hear clients saying the testing managers, get pushback from the business saying they can't release resources in time to do the necessary testing work and support the testing regime. And often people say to us they're never 100% confident that the testing processes are fit for purpose for the latest release of the Oracle platform. And having listened to all of these comments from our clients, we at Winfo thought there would be a better way of doing testing. There should be a way which reduces test times, which improves the quality of testing, which actually reduces the resource demand on the business, and of course, make sure that best practice is being followed. So in short, we want to make sure the testing process is like the very best football referee. Always there when needed, absolutely makes the big calls that are critical and makes the right calls when needed, and all done in an inobtrusive way so you hardly notice that they're around. So that's the regime that I'm sure we'd all love to see every 90 days happen. So with that introduction, what I'd like to now do is turn to our core discussion. And Lawrence, I'm going to come to you first, if I may. And really what I like to focus on initially is the overall test strategy, the overall approach to testing. You said earlier, Lawrence, you've got this experience across many different technology platforms, not just Oracle, and many large-scale implementations. Can you just share with us some of the challenges that you've experienced coming up in testing in this regime?
Yeah, I think, Mark, the biggest challenge that I have seen across my customers is really a change in mindset, particularly if they've come from having their ERP in an on-premise world, because an on-premise world, upgrades do not happen frequently. It could be 3, 4, even 5 years before there's an upgrade. And then there is a major project to do an upgrade. And that project has technical teams, it has test teams, and it has a huge amount of resource put in to doing it, and everybody's organized and focused around that. But the world of cloud, it saves you all of that cost and that risk and that disruption, but it requires a very different approach that every 90 days, in the case of Oracle, that you are in condition to take, accept, verify, and deal with any changes coming out of it. And that has a big impact for both the business team, okay, because it's a different kind of ongoing commitment they need to make. It also has an impact for support teams, because with a move to cloud solutions, the support team tends to be leaner and smaller and a bit more general purpose than maybe the on-premise support team. So, that makes a big change in mindset, the engagement, clarity and roles across the business and support teams. It needs to be viewed as a business as usual activity, not a technical type of activity. And that's what I have seen has been the biggest struggle that my customers and other customers that I'm talking to have to deal with as part of moving to cloud-based systems.
That's really interesting, Lawrence. Thanks for that. Seeing it as business as usual seems like the big message I heard from that in particular. Harry, from the supplier side, you said earlier, the solution architect side, what are the kind of challenges you see on a cloud-based testing program?
Sure, Mark. I mean, Lawrence spoke about the shift in mindset and the importance of testing here. I suppose in any project, in any cloud project, getting the test strategy right can't be emphasized enough, right? I mean, testing is a key for the success of a project. It plays a make or a break role, especially in an implementation where, towards the end, you have little time, a little slack towards left, and then difficult decisions have to be made. So there's no surprise that, there's a lot of effort that goes in from the beginning, building the strategy and planning to execution and things like that. But in spite of all that, there are challenges, and exactly the challenges that Lawrence just spoke about in terms of business availability. I mean, business teams are often quite lean. They have day jobs to do. They can't allocate time for testing. And in case of quarterly upgrades, there's a commitment that they need to do for 2 weeks every 90-day period. So this has quite an impact on the business critical activity, right? And in terms of rollouts, there's also the question as why do we need to test the same repetitive testing every time? Can we not do it just for, say, one business unit and leave it there? And unfortunately, the answer is no, as we all know, right? So, and despite all this planning, overcoming these challenges, getting the business on board, etc., and testing some of the critical scripts, there's always some of parts of the solution that still fail, right? So then, the biggest challenge then is, the test managers asking themselves, how do you get the coverage right? I mean, how do you ensure that, you've tested enough to give the business confidence that the testing has happened efficiently? So it is a big challenge. How do you get the coverage right, Mark?
Yeah, so Venkata, just on that, picking up that issue of the coverage that Harry was just talking about, we know there's quite a bit of discussion in the Oracle world around automated testing versus manual testing. Do you have a perspective on what is the best way to get the right kind of coverage? I think you're on mute, Venkata.
Thanks, Mark. It's a very good question. I have been working with clients in the last many years, helping them build strategies. As part of that, the most common theme is, do we want to do manual testing or automated testing? And Hari spoke about coverage. Lawrence spoke about a change in mindset. And absolutely all that is very important to have an automated testing to get the right coverage, get the right level of testing done within the timelines that we are looking at. So when companies try to do this, why automation is so complex, right? So it involves a number of things, identifying the right tool that works with the technology that's being used. Then they need the procurement of the licensing. And then once all this is in place, there needs to be an infrastructure in place to install the software. And we need to have a development team to actually automate the test scripts for the solution. And once all this is done, the solution continues to evolve, and you need to continue to make changes to your scripts as you change the solution or you implement a new module, etc., the maintenance of the scripts is an ongoing. Even for quarterly upgrades, when Oracle makes change to the solution, that solution also needs to reflect in the automated test scripts. So keeping all these things in mind, looking at off-the-shelf solutions is the right way to go forward, is my view on that, Mark. Thank you.
Thanks, Venkat. So let's come back in a few minutes to that maintenance of the scripts, because obviously that's critical. But maybe we can zoom in right now, Lawrence, on this 90-day release cycle and the business as usual approach that you mentioned a little bit earlier. Getting that kind of wired into the business, getting that mindset right. What are the kind of the challenges? What burden does this create in the organization where you're on this kind of treadmill of each quarterly release?
There's probably a few challenges. One of them is that it can appear to be complex, and what I mean by that is, your ERP systems increasingly, they have breadth of functionality. So they have finance, they have supply chain, they have procurement, inventory, and so on. Okay, they potentially will have integrations to other systems. So you have a big breadth of functionality there. You also have multiple legal entities on them. You potentially have multiple countries and different tax jurisdictions on them. And in some cases, you will also have multiple language support on them. So that's quite a lot of scope and complexity. And business teams, very few people will have a good end-to-end view across all of that. Business teams will have expertise in their area, but they won't necessarily know other areas. So you've got a big kind of, and it can be intimidating in terms of the breadth and the amount of detail and the complexity. So I suppose that's one challenge. The second thing is that, knowledge and change in personnel over time, it's difficult to keep that knowledge there, because even though you're doing testing every 90 days, people change in their roles, they get promoted, they go to new roles and so on. And so you have knowledge gaps. So how do you kind of capture that knowledge and systemize that knowledge? So that's the second challenge. And then the last part of it is around, and Harry kind of mentioned it earlier, a lot of the tests individually are quite straightforward. In fact, in many ways, they are routine or boring. And a business user says, I did this 90 days ago. Why do I have to test it again? Why is it important? So big challenge there is around not having a picture, not having knowledge of everybody from start to finish across everything, not having the ability to kind of capture that knowledge and build it and maintain it over time, and then having a mixture of tests, some of which are routine, boring, but important, and then making sure then you focus on kind of the higher risk ones that you need to get focused on. And that level of complexity, businesses struggle to know, well, how do I deal with it? And either to get overwhelmed and they have a massive team that just feel they're on a constant treadmill, or they need to look at a tool to deal with it better. And a tool, I think, is the more sustainable way to go longer term in terms of dealing with routine testing of upgrades and testing of releases.
Thanks, Lawrence. So, Harry, Lawrence has described this kind of complexity, the leakage of knowledge and resource happens over time, of course, and the almost a mundane nature of some of the work to be done, and the limited resources that many organizations find. What are some of the challenges and that come out of that in your experience?
Sure. I mean, Lawrence made a very important point in terms of the breadth of the functionality available. I mean, when companies make a shift to Oracle Cloud, they get access to the leading SaaS solutions. The solutions are constantly updated every quarter. So, companies are up to date. Okay. But again, the challenges that we talk about is that the quarter comes too early. The businesses feel that they've just completed the previous testing for the previous quarter, and they'll have to do it all over again. And redirecting the business resources from critical tasks is a massive challenge. So with limited time available, the questions that come up are what to prioritize and test. How you can't test everything in the time available. So what do I prioritize? How much do I test? which legal entities do I pick, which business units, do I pick. So what happens then is the coverage then becomes a risk-based approach, rather than a comprehensive one. And I think this can be a big challenge for businesses to manage.
That's really interesting, Harry. Maybe I could just follow up on that a little bit more. So what are the business risks that fall out of that, that prioritization you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, compromising on testing, has its challenges, right? I mean, when we take a risk-based approach, as I just said, it's never 100%. There are quarters where there are no issues, testing is fine and the upgrade has happened well. But there are certain times where it creates big disruptions. One of my recent experiences with a client is that they had an issue and they couldn't close their books, right? So they had to go and raise an SR and all that stuff. So it impacted their month-end timetable. While of course it had a big internal impact in terms of reporting, but it had quite a lot of external reporting as well, because they had timetables to report their financial statements to the stock markets, etc., and that got delayed as well. And so making sure that you get testing right is absolutely important, or else it can create massive problems. Mark.
Yeah, for sure. So I can see that not just internal, which is kind of a challenge in itself, but external to suppliers as well as the wider markets, of course. You're quite right. So Venkata, we've already mentioned a couple of times automation as a potential solution to the scale of the challenge and the business risks, etc. When you talked about introducing, when you started to think about developing an automated approach to testing, what was your vision?
Our vision was to simplify test execution with a click of a button.
Wow, one click of a button, as simple as that.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me, I think, a little bit of, I think it was Steve Jobs that said, identifying simplicity is really easy to say, but incredibly difficult to do. So you've done the easy bit, you've said what you'd like it to be. Can you just elaborate on that a little bit more, in terms of how you actually executed against that?
Absolutely. So what I'd like to do is, Mark, I'll just play a small video, which is about 3 minutes, to give a real view of the simplified approach and the steps involved in it and how the product actually works. It's a very 3-minute video which I'll play. I'm sharing my screen. Let me know when you're able to see my screen.
Great, we've got that.
What? Our vision is to simplify test execution with a click of a button. Watts test approach is very simple. Watts has ready to use test script library, which typically covers 80 to 90% of the scripts. We can add more customer specific scripts as required. We have Watts Scripts Assistant to generate scripts automatically. Enable Watts Chrome plugin. Execute the manual steps by navigating through the application. After completion of the manual test scripts, just click on the stop button, fill in the details and submit. Look at the script that gets generated. Alternatively, we can create Watts test scripts using Excel. Download the template, fill in the test scripts in the Excel and just upload the same into Watts. Your scripts are now ready to use. Now let's talk about the test run templates. We can create test run templates by adding the scripts from repository. We can drag and drop the scripts and add them to the test run. You can do this script by script or by process or by module or by role. The next step is to input test data for the test run templates. We can do this using Excel integrations. Provide input test data in the Excel and upload to Watts. Your scripts are now ready for execution. You can also copy the existing test run with input test data. Watts will automatically generate the test data from the test runs. Watts will allow output of one test script to be the input for another. Great, we are now ready for execution. Just click the execute button and the scripts start running. You can look at the status of the scripts running and the exact steps and the progress. You can review the execution reports for each script by clicking the status. After execution, we have execution reports available. The reports cover a summary along with the detailed steps execution evidence, which can be validated by the business and also use the same for approving internal IT processes. Analytics on the tool provides insights on the solution issues and allows drilling down to the detail. The application is also integrated with Jira and SharePoint. As we saw, the approach is really simple. Preparing the test script library, test script templates, and input test data is just a one-time setup. The customers can execute testing with click of a button as many times as they need. That's it, Mark. How does that sound?
Well, that sounds pretty good to me. Thanks for sharing that, Venkata. The things I picked up in particular from that were obviously the importance of the one-time setup and then the ongoing execution. I heard it talk about the script repository and the fact that the repository is kept up to date in line with the Oracle development each quarter. So it's an evolving kind of a resource, as it were. But also, the video mentioned the ability for customers to add their own scripts onto that and customize where necessary, which is obviously really important for many customers. And I saw at the end there was obviously the opportunity for reporting and analytics for the test managers. So all of that does indeed sound as though it's moving towards your vision of testing at the click of a button. So that's great.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you.
Before we turn to the next few questions, just a quick reminder to everyone. If you have any more detailed questions you want us to follow up with, a few have been coming in already, but if you look at the icon at the bottom of your screen, there should be a facility there for you to click on that and send some questions in, and we will try and pick those up towards the end. But maybe I can come back to you again now, Lawrence. So Venkata showed us that. I know you've had some direct experience of using Watts in practice. Is it as straightforward as it kind of seems in that video?
Yeah, my experience of the Watts test tool has been very, very good. And through my other clients, we have done a lot of work with customers who build their own software products, have a rapid and frequent release schedule, sometimes every month. And I've seen the benefit that automated testing has for them, particularly in terms of automated tests. But I've also understood, the level of effort and investment that needs to go in to build it, because it doesn't just happen. And as I started to work in increasingly on cloud implementations of ERP systems, and particularly Oracle, I was really looking to see where could we get a solution like this. And one of the things that I was very conscious of is that a big challenge starting off with an automated test toolkit, the value of it really depends on the quantity and the quality of the pre-built test scripts that you have. And if you are starting from scratch, it can be very intimidating. There's a learning curve to learn the tool. There's a learning curve to build up test scripts. And that can be daunting, expensive. And sometimes, customers decide it's not worth the effort and they just stick to doing it manually. And what I really liked about the Watts tool was that the framework was in place. It had been done very much focused on the Cloud Fusion product. There was a starting set of scripts. There was a clear commitment from the Winfo team to keep those scripts up to date for future releases. And then the tool itself, it was easy to build and maintain and add additional steps to it that if you found were useful, then were part of your library to be there for future releases. And that to me is the key tool that addresses some of those problems around, capturing knowledge, because you're essentially capturing the knowledge in those scripts. And that's, then you have less of a key person dependency if they're not available around executing tests. So experience I've had of it has been very, very positive.
Great, thanks, Lawrence. And Harry, from your perspective, as you said earlier, from the solution architect looking at this, how close are you to realizing Venkata's vision of one click?
I know it sounds, it sounds complicated when you have a large number of scripts. but it was actually quite easy to implement. The product teams were able to provide the environment very quickly. As Venkata said, the application comes with prepackaged scripts. For this particular client, 95% of the scripts we were able to match straight away, right? 5% needed some small amendments, but they were minor adjustments. The next task is to prepare the test data, and sometimes that can sound like a daunting job, but actually, it's a one-time job. But the functional teams were able to complete it with ease because they knew, the data that they wanted, and they were able to complete it with ease. And then there was the Excel plugin as well to upload the test data. So again, very, very quick. And we were able to execute the SIT, approximately, I would say, for all the legal entities put together, approximately 5,000 scripts were executed. And once you click the button, it all happened in less than a week, right? And all the test evidence, the screenshots, they were all available in the module for various teams to cross-check, for the businesses to audit and then sign off. So the whole process is very, very easy to do. And if you see this particular example I gave you, there were a large number of scenarios that we did, and fairly at a very, very short time.
And you said a week, Harry. Does that week cover both the one-time setup and the execution?
Yeah, all inclusive, because the setup itself was very quick, and the small changes that we were able to do in a couple of hours, and at the most, half day. So it was all inclusive from the time we got the environment, from the time that we could complete the testing.
Okay, that's great. Thanks very much. Okay, Venkata, let's turn to some of the maybe more practical considerations here, which some of our attendees might be interested in. So first of all, can you give us a little bit more information about the infrastructure behind Watts?
Sure, Mark. So we use SaaS-based infrastructures. So the Watts solution itself is a SaaS-based subscription, and we use Oracle Infrastructure Cloud to provision the environments, and it's one dedicated environment for each client. So no other clients will share the environments here. We have architected the solution in a way that 24 scripts can be run in parallel. But if clients want to run more, like what Hari said, 5,000 scripts I want to run in a week, we scaled up the environments as required. And it's all pretty much feasible, as this is all a SaaS offering.
Okay, that's pretty clear. Then what about security issues and for example test data? What's the security around that? What happens to test data?
Security is key for all our clients. Any solution that we offer, we need to make sure it's fully secured. So here there are a few considerations that we did, right? So the environment is fully dedicated for the client. So no other client or any other teams will have access to the client Watts application. Secondly, it is configured with non-production environments. So the Watts will test the execution only on the non-prod environments. And thirdly, what we also do is all the test data, we use anonymized data as much possible and encrypt all the usernames, password for all the test instances, and it is saved with including the test data. Everything is encrypted, so nobody will have access to see what the actual data is at any point in time. So the application is fully secured, and in some cases, our client security teams have validated the solution and they have certified the solution and given us a go ahead. So it's fully secured.
Okay, that's great. And turning to the business model, you mentioned earlier SaaS, and I know it's a license model. How does the charging regime work, Venkata?
I mean, it's an annual subscription that we offer to our clients. It's based on 3 different parameters. One is the number of scripts that they execute on an annual basis and the module footprint. And thirdly, the number of users. We work with the businesses and we build a business case, and we also charge a very small fee for setting up the the one-time setup for everything. So it's the clients we work with, we build a business case, and hence we'll be able to give a quote on them based on these parameters.
Okay, great. I mean, Lawrence, Venkata mentioned they're building a business case. In the example you referred to earlier, was that something that your client went through, building up a business case? Was that needed, do you think? Was that something that was useful?
It probably was not strictly needed, but I think it is a good idea to do a business case. And the reason I'd say it's a good idea to do a business case is that it makes it very obvious what the value is that the tool brings. And it really highlights the amount of effort that will go into it otherwise in terms of business resources. And it will give you a target for being more efficient with the tool. And that's directly measurable in terms of saving that you have there. It also gives you a framework to make it clear to you what the ongoing investment needs to be, what areas that you're building up your library of test scripts, and over time, where to kind of focus on a risk-based approach, because you will still want to have business input from a testing point of view. It's just that you're really leveraging your key business resources and you're getting the best value out of their expertise and the best value of their time. So it's a very good idea to do it, but the reality is that this is a necessary investment increasingly for anybody who wants to commit to being effective on the cloud. You really need to strongly consider automated test tools. And I think the business case, really just helps anybody considering a decision like this. It really helps you be clear around what to focus on and where the value is that you get come out of it.
Great, thanks, Lawrence. I mean, Harry, you mentioned an example you've been involved in earlier, and maybe some other examples you have as well. Have you seen them delivering on the business benefits that were anticipated? Has the automated testing regime Watts delivered on the expected benefits?
Sure. Let me maybe take an example of an high-tech client. They're based in the west coast of the US, and they had Oracle HCM implemented, HCM Cloud, and on a quarterly basis, the scope of testing was around approximately 300 odd scenarios. And this was a big, massive problem because every quarter they had to get business people involved and things like that. So, I think they've been using Watts for, it's the 5th quarter now. And, I get feedback from them that it has significantly reduced their testing execution time. Okay. And also it's completely minimized their business user involvement. The business users now get involved only at looking the evidence. They look at the evidence, they are confident that it's done what it should, and they sign it off. So, overall, the feedback is that it's completely improved their efficiency, the whole testing process. So it's great feedback, and it's been tested for a number of quarters. So as going back to the business case question, I think, what Lawrence said is absolutely right in the sense that I don't think that, this is a luxury anymore. An automated testing suite becomes an absolute necessity.
Great. Thanks for that, Harry, and that insight. Five cycles, I think you said, that this client had been on already. So that's really interesting. So look, I'm just going to draw this panel discussion to a close. We've got quite a few questions come in already, so I'm going to turn to questions in a second. And please do feel free to add some more. Just to remind you again, hopefully at the bottom of your screen there's a Q&A icon. So please, any questions or comments you've got, please put in there. But in summary, I think we've heard about the challenge of the testing regime. If you're going to really realize some of those benefits of an Oracle Cloud implementation, you need a testing regime that provides the coverage, that can make sure it's delivering on this 90-day cycle, this treadmill that comes around. As you said, Harry, I think a little bit earlier, is it the end of the quarter already, sort of thing, and we only just finished testing. So you need to make sure you've got that cycle of testing in place. You're not pulling the business out of shape. It needs to become, as you said, Lawrence, business as usual. And ideally an automated approach, if we get it absolutely right, click of a button, to use your phrase, Venkata, will hopefully make sure we get the requisite coverage and everything kind of in line, ready to go. So there's no undermining of critical business processes. Look, really interesting, guys. Thank you very much indeed. So I am going to come to questions. First question that's come in, maybe I can point this to you actually, Venkata. we had this little video earlier on, and one of our questioners is asking, is it possible to arrange a more extensive demonstration for their team?
Absolutely, Mark. We will welcome such requests. We'll be happy to set up a time with the client and run through a more dedicated demo. And we can also, if they want us to demo on their environments, we'll be very open to do that as well. We work with the clients, we decide the scripts that they want to see, we demonstrate that on the tool, and we'll help them guide through the decision making process and deployments as well.
Okay, great. Thanks, Venkata. Next question, Harry, and I think this is probably more for you, picking up on one of your last points about the tool being used on client sites. You mentioned 5 release cycles, I think. Just how long is how mature is the tool, and how extensive has it been used in the real world, as it were?
Yeah. I think I gave you one example where it's we've used it for 5 quarters now. There are a few more examples. There's another client that we use for finance, procurement, and PPM, where they're completing their 4th quarter now. And as Venkata I think mentioned earlier on as well, we keep these scripts up to date based on the release as well. So we constantly work with with our clients to update the scripts based on the latest releases. The buttons might have changed, screens might have changed, etc. So it makes it more seamless for clients as well in that particular respect. So there are a few customers who've done it for more than 4 quarters and for various modules as well.
And just a follow on from that, what kind of coverage do we have across the modules? You've mentioned HCM earlier when we were on the panel. You've mentioned a couple of other modules just now. What's the kind of coverage?
Yeah, I think all financial modules. We've got procurement there. We've got Sales Cloud in there at the moment. We've got PPM there. PPM is a big part of our solution. We've covered most of the HCM suite of modules as well, and we're constantly adding it as well. So as and when we add more and more modules, it becomes more and more comprehensive. For example, we've been recently talking to another client where I have a suite of modules as well. So we've given them a commitment that we will prepackage the scripts before handing it over. So it's constantly evolving. So all the basic modules, the as I said in my client, 95% of the test scripts we were able to directly match it with the repository. So that's a big win for us.
Lawrence, the example you referred to earlier in one of your clients, what coverage, what modules was involved in that? Can you recall?
So that would have covered all the financials, so general ledger, accounts receivable, accounts payable, cash management, fixed assets. It would have had procure to pay, so purchase orders all the way through to accounts payable, and Oracle PPM, so that would be project management. They would have been the core parts. We haven't extended it yet to integrations with other cloud systems, but I could see that happening at some point in the future as well.
Okay, thanks, Lawrence. A little bit more detailed question, maybe Venkata, this is probably best for you, I think. So someone's asking, can we do performance testing using virtual users?
Absolutely, the tool is capable of doing that. As we said, we can understand the requirements on what kind of performance testing that we are looking, and we can clone the users and we can run multiple tests of the same on the same environment, and we can publish some results.
Great, and maybe you can answer first, and this might be something Harry wants to add to another question, which is you talked about the tool coming with predefined automated scripts. What's the language that the script is built on?
Yeah, so it's a framework that we have developed, Mark. It's kind of Oracle certified tool, which is Selenium in the backend, and that's the engine. I mean, that's the heart, but it's a completely certified by Oracle, and that's the framework that we use. So we can actually execute these scripts on any web-based application. And
Great.
again, the scripts are all written in English for the users to see, but the backend engine is all written using Selenium framework, which is certified by Oracle for Fusion applications.
Sure. Good. Thanks, Venkata. Just another question to come up on the business case, which we touched on at the end. And I don't know whether Harry or you, or maybe Lawrence, you might want to comment on this. The question is, what's a typical return on investment period? We mentioned we've got clients who are using this for 12 months or more. Is there a typical period you would see a return on investment?
In my experience is that it will be less than 1 year. That obviously depends a little bit on what the starting point is, but my experience is that from peace of mind, use of resources effectively, and not being caught by surprises, it'll comfortably pay for itself in less than a year. And in some cases, it could be paid for itself after the first test cycle. It could well pay for itself, but typically I would have thought it'll pay for itself in less than 12 months.
Harry, was that your experience as well?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think, there are quite a lot of different angles to this as well. One is a return of investment from a financial perspective as well. But there are other aspects to consider as well, right? So, reducing risk for business, freeing up business time, to do other activities as well. So there are other intangible items, and we often come back and said, this is a small price to pay for all those things as well. So I would completely agree with Lawrence in terms of the ROI time, but it's much more larger benefits that the users get, and not just a financial aspect of it.
Right, I see. So it's both the saving in time and the financial aspects and staff time, etc. But it's the reducing the disruption and the consistency of the approach as well.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay. Venkata, I've no idea about this one, so I'm going to look at you in the hope that you can catch this. All right, you ready for it? So someone wants to know how we manage proxy server setup during scripting if external pages need to be captured, for example, supplier site like banner.
So we have a configuration within the application where we map the environments to the product. So we don't need to do any proxy setup, etc. It will do exactly like how a user performs, and that's how the application is configured. So there are no technical configurations required to link between these two environments. All it is to do is give the URL within the application, it does the job.
Okay, cool. Harry, you made a big mistake at the start. You introduced yourself as an accountant. So this next question, I'm gonna look at you, okay? And the question is, how do we handle an audit trail? Or how does the tool handle an audit trail?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. It's a good question, and I think we constantly get asked this question as well. So if you look at how the tool works, is that every single step that the automation tool in the background, i.e. Watts, does is completely recorded and screenshotted, right? So every single step, whether you're logging in, opening a screen, entering data, every single step has a screenshot, and once the step is complete, it saves the screenshots within the module itself. So when I go into a test run, I open it, I'm able to see every single step that's been carried out, and if there are errors, it also tells me where it has stopped and what it has done. So I have a complete audit trail in terms of what we do. Similar, let's say if a manual testing a user would do using a particular test tool, they would take screenshot or they would do the recording. So everything happens here automatically in the background as well. And at any point in time, and I think I've seen auditors come and have a look at it as well. And I think for things like, it's not just quarterly upgrades, right? We've used it for implementations as well, right? And one of the prerequisites in an implementation, especially for, let's say, a UAT, is that it needs to be audited, right? So, there is an internal audit team that looks at the scripts and signs it off as well. So everything is audit trailed. You can go and look back at it at any point in time. Very easy to kind of look at it. I think in the video, Venkata kind of slightly showed the reporting aspect of it. So it's so it's complete audit trail in terms of what the system has done.
Thanks, Harry. I mean, just picking up that last point, Venkata, at the end of the video, there was a reporting and analytics the video were referred to. Is that how you get access to that kind of information, the audit trail, and is that the interface?
Absolutely. So we have two things, right? So there is a test execution report, and the test execution report is so detailed that every step it executed, it is it is mentioned in the report, and you have a summary as well. You may not necessarily want to go and review everything, so there is a content slide page which will then help you to drill down to a particular report, a particular section of the report, and validate that particular script. Secondly, we also have a distinction between a pass and a failed script. So if a particular script failed, you can straight away jump into the failed script and understand where exactly it failed, understand what is the error message that you got on the screen, and you also have the facility to integrate with your Jira tickets. So when if you are using Jira for your defect management, it will also create the defects directly into Jira with all the screenshots and the script steps, and at what part of the script it failed, etc. All the information is available for the implementation team or the support team to fix those issues very easily. That's on the reporting side. You can, if you're on the screen, you can look at one particular script as well, and the detailed reporting is available. On the analytics side, as Harry mentioned, Lawrence mentioned, you may be doing projects, you may be doing BAU support, a particular module, etc. You have different things. You can actually drill down and understand in which module you have the problems. What kind of scripts are failing regularly. What is that we need to do to fix them? It could be sometimes scripts not executed with the right set of configuration in the application, or it could be because of lack of that particular navigation changed, etc. So we can draw some conclusions in terms of where the problem is, and how to get ready for the next time or the next project or the next quarter. So it becomes easy for the teams to understand where they need to focus better. So in analytics, again, we have some notifications as well. So after you click that execute button, you can go and have a coffee or do your meetings, whatever it is, and you get an email when it starts, and you get another email when it ends. It will also give you an indication of typically this will take X number of hours or X number of minutes to execute this based on the number of scripts. Depending on the number of scripts in the test run, it can take different times. So it will also indicate so that you can plan your work better. There is also a scheduling option available. When you schedule it, you get these notifications that schedule started. When the schedule completed, it will say the schedule is completed. So you don't need to spend much time just waiting for these reports. Click, refresh, and understand what's happening.
Venkata, great answer. And I'll tell you in particular why it was great, because you covered the next two that have come up. We had a question on, does it work with Jira, which you've already mentioned, of course. And there was another question about how are errors in a test scenario handled by the tool, which you've answered. So as usual, Venkata, you're ahead of me. So thanks very much for that. Look, we're coming up to 5 or 6 minutes before the end. So I'm just going to draw this to a close, I think. There were a few more questions I know, which we'll try and address offline. So sorry we haven't had the chance to get to them today, but appreciate your interest. So thank you, panel, for a really interesting and stimulating discussion. Appreciate your time. Thank you to everyone attending, and thank you for listening to us and for the various questions that came through. I hope you found that stimulating and enjoyable. As I said at the start, we will be sending out a link to this recording. If you've got any follow-up questions or any further queries that you've got, please don't hesitate to contact us at sales@winfosolutions.com. And please do look out for the next several in our series of seminars. So follow us on LinkedIn or in the various other social media posts that we've got. This is a program that we're running over the next few months. So look out for the next one. And thank you very much to everyone. Have a good rest of your day. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.